Welcome to TopShot NFT. I'm your host, Jason. As always, my big man in the corner, Linux. And today we've got a great guy, Jacob Eisenberg from TopShot, the community lead. Welcome to the pod, Jacob.
Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be here.
So what in the world does a community lead for TopShot do? If you can just kind of, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the community that know you, but they don't know you.
Sure. Yeah. So I think in the past month, it's been part kind of email marketer, part firefighter, part kind of delegator. I'm a big NBA fan. I liken myself to be one of the experts on the team as far as like the NBA content. So, helping out with strategy around releases, but day to day, if you get an email from NBA TopShot, that's coming from me. When it comes to our social strategy, when it comes to our Discord, I'm helping kind of formulate approaches there as far as like, for example, in recent weeks, we've added a bunch of new roles on our Discord, from support captains to onboarding captains. That's all kind of stuff that I'm working with Usman, who's our community manager, to kind of help get those going. And then, on the other side, of course, we've been kind of bombarded with tickets, understandably, a lot of people trying to figure out what's going on. So just trying to help streamline communications from Dapper to the community at large. We are somewhat unique on the community side in that we have kind of a dedicated customer support team and then a dedicated community team. And while there's overlap in kind of responsibilities and we're constantly in sync on kind of communications, I'm not necessarily in the queues handling tickets as much as other members of the team, but I'm certainly kind of in collaboration with them, trying to get any kind of FAQs that they're getting documented so we can put out a blog to make sure that everyone in the community knows like these are known issues that we're working toward.
Cool. And what kind of brought you into the TopShot family or Dapper family, if you will? Sure.
So it was a kind of long road here. When I was in college, I actually covered the NBA for the Atlanta Hawks as a blogger. And then kind of parlayed that experience, the access I got there was very data oriented, and kind of actually became a freelance consultant and scout. So I worked for a bunch of different agents that had clients both in the NBA, but also overseas. You can kind of think of those guys as the 61st pick, so to speak, in the NBA draft. And then ended up becoming a scout for Draft Express, which at the time was kind of the biggest mock draft site / scouting site. Mm-hmm. And just through those experiences, I had a blast, but I also learned that working in the industry is very cutthroat and not necessarily the most sustainable for making a living. So I kind of shifted gears and joined the startup world. I started at a daily fantasy sports app called Daily Bracket. Was very early there. There were only 4 people on the team. So we had some success. And then baseball season came around, the other sports were off the table, and we lost a lot of our collector base, or our user base, I should say. And then I went to an app called Amino, which was trying to be like Reddit meets Tumblr, so targeting a younger demographic than Reddit. Was there for about 3.5 years, grew an NBA fan community there to about 130,000 members. Left there, went to Overtime, the sports startup in Brooklyn, and was there as a community manager. In the months preceding the pandemic, I got to go down to Atlanta to do a video shoot with Trae Young and some Overtime fans. So that was fun. Pandemic hit, wasn't safe anymore to have in real life meetups with our fans. Sports was off the table. So I ended up taking the summer off and was trying to be pretty methodical about what my next step was. And TopShot kind of came on my radar and I fell in love instantly.
Do you know Arthur Trish?
The name does sound familiar, but I can't say how I would know him.
So I'm a little older than you. Arthur Trish was the media relations director in 20 years ago for the Hawks. He might be retired or moved on, as we know in the NBA, but when I was interning, my first internship was with CNN, and I covered the Hawks, and that was the year Kwame Brown was drafted. Wow. So I was doing all the pre-draft interviews and did like a big story because that was the first year so many high school players went. And so we both have our start kind of with the Atlanta Hawks.
Right, and Kwame was from Georgia, I believe, if I recall correctly. So that's awesome. I think the Hawks, did they get Pau Gasol that year and trade him immediately to Memphis? Was that what happened?
Yeah, they ended up with Sharif Abdur-Rahim.
Right.
And like Jason Terry was like a young, like a rookie Jason Terry.
Right.
And he's one of my favorite players because I was interviewing him at like a Hawks reach out program camp. And I said to Jason Terry, I was like, so do you think like the next Michael Jordan's out here? He's like, maybe the next Jason Terry. He was so cool. So that's kind of cool that we have that Hawks tie. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Great sentiment. I'm not positive. When you were there, was it Phillips Arena at that point? Or I guess that may have came later.
Phillips Arena. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's State Farm Arena. They have barbershop courtside. It's pretty crazy what they've been doing to that stadium.
They have to do something because back then it was like playing a game. It was like playing a game during the pandemic. There was nobody there. It was super quiet. That was their home court advantage, was the silence.
Right. I was there kind of the peak Josh Smith post just after Joe Johnson era. And they won 60 games kind of toward the end of that era. And that was like really eye-opening to see just how much of a difference 3 years made from like kind of being the 5 seed or 6 seed and then becoming the 1 seed, just how much the fan base really turned out in Atlanta, as you are probably full aware. Like it's an extremely transient city with lots of young people moving in. So I think the Hawks fan base is going to continue to grow and grow as the years go by.
Well, Lennox has ties to Atlanta too.
Yeah, I used to live in Atlanta for a bit. Buckhead and 400 and the miserable traffic are all very familiar to me. Jacob, thanks again for joining us. Quick question I want to ask you. So you mentioned your background was in scouting and kind of looking at players from an early stage in the 61st pick, if you will. How does that skill set kind of transfer into the Top Shot, right? So how are you selecting what moments are going to go into packs? How do you select, this is going to be something that people are interested in? Just pull the hood back, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I know Alan joined your show a couple of weeks ago, maybe. And Alan is certainly closer to the editorial experience of picking which specific moments do make it in and which tiers those moments encompass. I think my skill set, like I could tell you not only where Malik Beasley went to college, but I can tell you like how many points he averaged in college. Like I just have an obsessive kind of personality when it comes to like these players that might not be the most famous in the league. And so I can kind of look at who we don't yet have moments for and help kind of poke, hey, I think like we should definitely have a Derek White moment coming soon, or Emmanuel quickly is starting to gain a lot of buzz, like though he was the 26th pick in the draft, like we should probably try to prioritize getting his first moment ahead of maybe someone else who's a rookie that was drafted ahead of him, but might not be as hyped up in the fan base right now. I think it comes down to, I watch religiously. I'm probably watching 2-3 games a night, just trying to hop through League Pass and eat up as much of it as possible. So I'm pretty on the trends, and Top Shot's unique in that like we can't just keep on churning out LeBrons. LeBron might have the player of the game every single night, but if we mint LeBron nonstop, then it becomes a significantly less interesting collector experience. So I think, just offering 2 cents on that end of like, I think these are the rookies that are going to have the biggest pop from the get-go. These are like, I think we had a few conversations a while back about when we're doing rookie moments such as LaMelo Ball, how much of a priority should we put on it being from his debut game? Of course, LaMelo Ball didn't score in his debut game, so the moment that did make it to Top Shot was a less than remarkable assist. But because it was his first assist, I was still pretty excited about that possibility because that's a zeitgeist moment. If LaMelo Ball goes on to become a Hall of Famer, people are always going to want his first assist.
Was it hard to kind of pick that because he did have the behind the back assist that like lit the internet on fire,
right?
But then his first assist was probably not as dramatic. So how would you do that?
Yeah, so the behind the back assist came in the preseason, and we as a rule really wanted to not do any preseason moments. We think, I think you can get into a whole mess when you're talking about rookies of, you could do summer league, you can do their literal draft moment, like when they're walking up to the podium, so to speak. Like there are so many options there, but for us, there's a huge emphasis and priority to like their first regular season game should be the one that stands out the most to the fans long term. That's always going to hold weight. That's if you're looking at their career box score, so to speak, that's the first time that their stats are on record. So we want to kind of lean into that. Certainly with LaMelo, he had 2 assists in his debut game. The other assist was a nicer pass, admittedly, than his first assist, but it went to Cody Zeller, who immediately got goaltended on the play. So it was not while the pass was nicer, it was also less than satisfying. We did a lot of research before we made that decision. LaMelo Ball was actually the first highly touted player since Anthony Bennett really to go scoreless in their NBA debut. Wow. So that is a super outlier. I wouldn't anticipate to continue. Anthony Bennett, of course, went down as a bust, but I think we were looking at it like Tim Hardaway Jr. was another guy that went scoreless in their debut, but he was the 23rd pick in the draft or something. So if we're running that math every 5 years, there's one player that's highly touted. We're going to take our chances with that. We were fortunate that LaMelo did get his first assist in his debut game because, as you guys might know, we're adding a rookie badge to the platform. And those rookie badges are going to be kind of classified based on whether it happened in their debut game, if the moment was minted in their actual rookie season, or if it was minted historically. Something like a Giannis run it back or a Victor Oladipo run it back will get a rookie badge, but might not be distinguished in the same way as a rookie mint from the season that they debuted.
Right. As far as the Discord, because I think I'm pretty sure that you spent some time on that. Usman is all over it. Interestingly enough, Roham was on there late last night, and he actually kind of there's it can be very toxic in there. Yeah. What is your opinion on what's kind of been going on recently in the Discord, and as far as just TopShot's responsibility, because it's very difficult. Obviously it's packs. And as soon as someone logs in, they've missed whatever, even if there was an announcement or even a fake announcement from some of these trolls. But what's just kind of your handling of that?
Yeah. So my background is in community building. I think through the experience at Amino, where we had a fair share of toxicity, granted from a significantly younger demographic that could actually be quite meaner on the internet. Yeah. I learned some best practices there. I would say the toxicity in Discord right now is a symptom of the product not living up to our standards as a company. So when the site is going very slow or there's maintenance modes and it's crashing and we're not able to release packs because we don't trust our drops, I think it's expected that people are going to get restless. They're putting money in and they're counting on an awesome experience I'm sure you guys had for the first few weeks before we really went viral. And I think once we get back to a place where we're humming out content every week and everyone is, excited, I think there's clear kind of symptomatic pains of people just being stressed that no new content's coming out and they can't get their hands on packs and the economy is kind of at a stalemate, so to speak. So I think a lot of that will resolve itself as we fix the performance issues and get more packs out to the open. I do think, and we've been more kind of communicative with our mods and our refs and our captains over on Discord in recent weeks to, not rule with an iron fist. Like I wouldn't put it in that language, but don't give the trolls as much kind of free reign to wreak chaos. So if people are impersonating Dapper Labs employees or referees, like we just gotta ban them from the Discord instantly, because there's no room for that. I think there is there is room, and there needs to be room for a place for collectors to air their grievances or ask questions. That's why I'm trying to join as many of these podcasts as possible, because I believe strongly in one-to-many communication rather than one-to-one. And I think, like, as you might have noticed over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a weekly office hours, Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, just to kind of be a man of the community a little bit more, hear the feedback, hear the questions that are coming up. And again, I think I spend a lot of my days DMing with people on Discord, and it's an endless treadmill, and we're trying to prioritize for breadth, not depth of conversation. So if we can talk to 100 people and just answer their questions, get their support tickets kind of addressed, that's more effective to me than having 2 or 3 extensive conversations there. So I'm looking at more ways to optimize for one-to-many communications. And I think as we scale our team up, Usman's been kind of operating 1.5 jobs in himself. So I think we're all kind of working, significant hours trying to really make this work. And we're really excited about the future. But I think we grew much faster than anyone in-house expected. And it's much higher to hire someone either as a contractor or a full-time role than it is to, or at least for us, than it is to maybe release a new pack or to have kind of an office hours to quell tensions. So reinforcements are coming on the way of, scaling out the team, both on the customer support side to handle more tickets, and then on the community side to help kind of mediate and liaise between both our mods and our awesome volunteers in the community, but also maybe power collectors that aren't on the team but have grievances to air themselves.
Right.
I know that Jason mentioned the whole pack, the thirst for packs, and how everybody wants to get that done. Also, I know there have been issues with the whole withdrawal thing. Kind of turning the corner, what do you guys do well? Like, what is NBA TopShot right now? Like, what are you proud of in terms of what you've accomplished?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're a state-of-the-art technology that has never been done on this scale before. We've grown exponentially over the past month, where literally each week we've pretty much doubled our collector base as far as who owns a moment. I think challenges have been a massive success. People are really obsessed with the challenges. We just released a new update last night that we have this master challenge for Cool Cats. So we're going to do a bunch of Cool Cats drops. And if you collect all of the Cool Cats moments from the set, you'll earn yourself a LaMelo Ball common reward, limited edition reward that will be printed exactly to the demand of people that complete the master challenge. I think we do a lot of things great. Like our social game is really strong. I think you're seeing that organically. People are now hashtagging NBA TopShot this whenever they see a great play happening in the NBA. I think for all of the drama we've seen on Discord and maybe toxicity in recent weeks, I think generally speaking, we haven't had someone come to TopShot, be able to land a pack or interact with the marketplace and leave kind of sour, right? Like everyone that comes generally has a great time. We know that withdrawals is a big issue and we're prioritizing that, but identity checks is going to be a hurdle for every blockchain company going forward. We're not unique in that sense. Like it's really important for us to get that right, make sure your collection is safe and there's no fraud happening that would put a lot of your assets at risk. So I think we do a lot of things great. And I think like the growing pains that we're seeing are, not uncommon in the space. And I think if you remember back to the very early days of Twitter, it was almost a meme in themselves that, yeah, we're down again, like we'll be back up soon. And how do you communicate that without Twitter? How do you communicate to a Twitter audience that you're down if you can't use Twitter to communicate it? So, I think we have work to do for sure, and lots of areas to improve, but I think our designs are flawless. I think our pack art is awesome. I think the moments themselves, the style of the moments that we're choosing, the economy itself is really working. I think people have really understood the scarcity of certain moments, what makes a set more valuable than a different set. Limited editions and circulating count are pretty understood pretty quickly now, whereas early on in the collector base, it may have taken a few weeks to really kind of convey those messages more effectively. So I'm really encouraged, to be clear. Like, I think we're on the right track, and a lot of these things will get sorted out in the not too distant future. But I think we had to have some hiccups before we could really pour gasoline on the fire and really grow this out. Any stagnation that you may have seen in the marketplace this week, I think is a product of one of two things. Like, we're not getting packs out, and that's because in recent weeks we've been seeing people gaming the system and scripting bots to be able to acquire packs and doing things that make it really hard for us to release packs. And the natural thought would be like, well, why don't you restrict packs to just new accounts? When someone's just going to create 20 new accounts and figure out a way to get all those packs. So we're working through that. I think like we're having a reckoning as far as like, we don't think it's sustainable anymore for us to turn a blind eye to people having multiple accounts. I think one account per collector is necessary for the sustainability of the site, especially as we continue to figure out ways to drop packs to the community creatively. If someone has 5 accounts and has 5 times the chance of getting that pack, it's just inherently an unfair landscape for other collectors. So, we're working through that legalese right now. We're trying to figure out what the right approach is. We're not blind. We know that people do have multiple accounts. We're trying to kind of phase into them consolidating their accounts into one. And that could include kind of consolidating the credits they have from Dapper in cases where they have a lot there, but certainly just gifting moments to another account. I think I just kind of word vomited a bit, but there was a lot there.
No, I just trying to process everything. What, as far as, right before we jumped on, you said that you guys are cultivating like a state of the union, and me and Lennox were discussing it last night, and, I compare NBA TopShot to like a really hot, girl that you're interested in that doesn't like text you back for like a day, and you're like, man, forget her. And then she texts you back and it's like, what's up? It's like, hey, want to get, like, it's like I can see where like there might be some people that have come to the site, especially like new people. And for me personally, I got a couple guys that I turned on to probably within the last week. And, as soon as like they've actually been a part of like 2 drops, and I'm getting bombarded with texts, like it's all the errors, and they're trying to ask me. And of course I'm trying to get my packs too. And
right.
Is there a way that maybe TopShot can just like release like a State of the Union almost every day? Because as we've seen in TopShot, like we're in a weird time space continuum that is not real life. We've already talked about, like, it feels like Lennox and I have not only been doing this podcast for a long time, but we've been in TopShot for like 2 years. It's just like, remember way back when? It's like, dude, that was Monday. It's like, oh yeah, So is it just kind of? I think that the disgruntled users just feel like they've kind of been left in the dark. And has there been like a discussion to really be a little more transparent? Because everything you just said makes me feel at ease, but the masses don't get that.
Yeah, and I think, for months before we even had any evidence of bots, we had members of the community saying we have bots. And the name of the game when it comes to drops is that not everyone could get a pack. If everyone could get a pack, they wouldn't be as sought after and they wouldn't be as coveted. Mm-hmm. So the FOMO is kind of necessary for some people to understand why it's important to be really good at like setting your alarms and getting to the packs in time. So there was no evidence of bots for months, and we were getting bombarded with people accusing bots of ruining the system. And that's just the system by design. Like, people are not always going to get packs. And as much as we want to help get packs into the hands of every collector, it's just a thing that not every time will work in your favor. So we didn't really want to like embolden the flames of people claiming bots before we did have legitimate evidence. Of course, we tried to drop cool cats a few times, and it didn't work. So then we reverted to kind of this fallback option that we knew would always be a last resort. And that was kind of creating a reservation system based on people that tried to get a pack and weren't able to, and then doing a random draw for all the remaining packs after we accommodated the people that put in the work. That ended up being way more time consuming than we had hoped. We were hoping that would be kind of something that we could continuously fall back on. It might be. I mean, we were able to get packs into the hands of the people that won the random draw and had, rightfully reserved their pack. But that took significant engineering time and our head of products time away from like actually addressing the issues of like what's going on with these pack drops. So I think a daily kind of state of NBA TopShot might be a little ambitious, but I think certainly office hours every Friday is an opportunity for people to ask questions, and I will continue to be as open as possible there. And then as far as kind of the blog going out today, I think it will acquiesce or accommodate some of the concerns. But I think like our top priority one of our top priorities after site performance is making sure that new collectors are able to get their hands on a pack, because that's integral to the experience. You need to have that first taste of like opening a pack, kind of like what happened when you were a kid with trading cards. And through that experience, you really start to understand why these moments are special and the fun of the game. If NBA TopShot is an amusement park, you can kind of think of the pack drops as Space Mountain.
Right.
So we really want to continue to lean in there. And I think we have some really promising developments in the works that you might see a stress test in the next day or two, and that will kind of help inform our path forward as to whether we can do drops without crashing the site. And I think we're really optimistic about our progress.
So is it fair to assume that one of the reasons why the Cool Cats release wasn't successful was bots, the amount of traffic that those bots are generating? I guess that's number one. And number two, I know we've done the timed release. I know we've done the reservation system. Could you speak of any other potential release mechanisms you guys may have in the works right now?
Sure. So on the Cool Cats front, bots definitely impacted the reservation and the random draw. People created scripts, and we saw within like maybe 5 hours of announcing we were doing that random draw that people created about 30,000 accounts. And so that those 30,000 inflated our email list and totally kind of distorted what our metrics are. So that was a huge learning for us. When we did the distribution on that random draw, we certainly tried to prioritize people's accounts that were made before the email went out, knowing that the random draw might be a thing. But even since that email went out, we had lots of non-bot accounts that had applied for a pack, and we didn't want to completely ignore that cohort of the audience as well. So to answer the question, yes, Cool Cats was definitely afflicted by bots. We have learned a lot of lessons in just the last week or two about kind of how we can address that. And then on the second level, I think we have a few different ideas in the works. I think like an auction style pack drop could be interesting, where people put up what they would pay for a pack, and depending on how many packs we have, we wouldn't take whatever the top person's willing to pay, but maybe what the median person's willing to pay, or something like that could inform price points. I think when it comes to drops in general, we are partnering potentially with some great companies that can help us throttle traffic to ensure that the site doesn't get overwhelmed. more details on that coming soon. I don't think we've signed pen to paper with anyone quite yet, so it might be premature to disclose that. And then certainly on kind of the event that is a pack drop, we want to build that out significantly in the next year to a point where you can almost envision. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with HQ, the app, the trivia app, where they had like a game show every night. We could kind of do something like that around pack drops, where we have a host and we have maybe former players and personalities in the NBA space that are kind of talking about the pack. And as that show is going on, we can kind of do a random selection of people, random selection to pick the right kind of collectors to win a pack or win a reservation to purchase a pack, so to speak.
So as a fan of the NBA, and just as far as TopShot's concerned, I believe I read something where they've actually kind of like put a little bit of a restrictor plate on you, if you will, as far as you guys actually being able to participate. Like it said something like maybe employees can't buy packs. What is your involvement as a user? Like,
Sure.
and how limited is that? How, what's your fandom like? Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the platform, and I was collecting for a while. Really enjoyed the collecting aspect. I think like many people that came in before it went viral, it was just a fun kind of free space to, if you believed in the product as much as our team did, like it felt like a good thing to, try to collect. In recent weeks, it's become kind of increasingly kind of dynamic conversation. So employees of Dapper Labs have currently frozen their accounts, so to speak. So we're not buying, selling, interacting with challenges, doing anything on pack drops. To be determined whether that's a permanent change. I would anticipate it's not going to be a permanent thing, but we need to figure out a kind of more comprehensive play policy that ensures that. I think the real concern, just to take a step back, is a few years ago, someone at either DraftKings or at FanDuel won the other company's like league, like the $1 million or whatever the prize was. And that was a huge scandal and almost brought down daily fantasy sports. So the last thing we want is anyone on our team to accidentally create a big scandal. And I don't think that would happen. This is an economy based on supply and demand. And I think as long as we're operating within the parameters of what the market is dictating and not trying to gouge a market or corner any market by buying up, a lot of a specific moment just to kind of have leverage there, I think in theory it should be kosher for us to be able to partake. But I think we'll see what that looks like. It's something that I know our team is highly conscious of, and we're happy to kind of pump the brakes and just freeze our accounts for the interim until we kind of have a more comprehensive strategy going forward that ensures that we're not jeopardizing anyone at the company or putting ourselves at risk.
I mean, that's a hell of a 401k bonus. It's like here, you had if you got like a cosmic or a hollow or that's what's just so crazy is, it's here it is, February 4th. We started about this time a month ago. And like I said, it feels like forever. And I remember, I've said this on every podcast, Linux was just like, oh, I bought another one of those packs. And I was like, why are you like, we're waiting for the deck the hoops. We're waiting for the big packs. Those little packs got nothing in them. Those are a waste of time. And of course, as we've seen, the hockey stick growth. What do you attribute to this meteoric rise? Like, because like it literally felt like first of all, Deck the Hoops was actually a pretty hard pack to like, it sold out really quickly. Were you guys doing like an ad campaign? And I've also seen where you guys have kind of scaled back and pulled back all your kind of ad campaigns besides you guys kind of showing up on podcasts and things.
Yeah. So I think it all was kind of a perfect storm. And because we did a bunch of different things at once, it's really hard to isolate what exactly happened and what was the biggest kind of catalyst. But around the time we had Tyler Hero's first promotion, within a kind of 10-day frame, we had Tyler Hero talking about us on Instagram and Twitter. We did our showcase contest where if you put together a showcase and get 10 likes, you get $15 in credit. We created a stimulus package, so to speak, where if you bought your first pack, you got $5 back that you can then use to buy up $1 moments in the marketplace, create a showcase with those $1 moments, and then get $15. So it's just a constant engagement loop of getting more credits from Dapper for doing all of these things. And then, of course, we had some huge purchases coincide with this timing as well. Jonathan Bales, one of the Fantasy Labs guys, bought the John Morant with a kind of investment group for $35,000, and then blogged about why he bought a $35,000 moment. And I think the title of the post was as self-aware and kind of tongue-in-cheek as, I bought a $35,000 video I could have watched on YouTube. Here's why. Mm-hmm. And Jonathan Bales, I think, has a lot of clout and respect in the industry. He's worked with Mark Cuban on certain projects. So I think like through his influence and the Fantasy Labs guys all getting involved, Adam Lefko, who does NBA on TNT on Tuesdays, he was part of that investment group as well that bought the John Morant. He went on a podcast or two talking about why he was excited about TopShot. And I think it really just had some viral growth from there within kind of the NBA tech nerd community. And I think we still are, we're only at 30,000 collectors. I would anticipate, with 1.5 billion NBA fans around the world, like we have a lot of runway to cover. So that's super exciting. But I think all those things kind of coinciding within a 10-day frame really catalyzed the growth. And it would be foolish to try to diagnose which one was the most important, but I think all of them happening at once was a really nice North Star for us to follow long term of, okay, like we can do this, this, and that. And if we stimulate the economy through, gifting credits for doing certain actions, then we can really kind of continue to increase these feedback loops, because I think baller status is cool, but I think people like getting credits into their account even more.
So I think first and foremost, Jason and I are just fans of basketball. I play basketball D1 in college, and we love watching games and kind of having conversations back and forth. Personally, I'm a big Spurs fan, so I love Keldon Johnson. Big fan of Devin Vassell.
Yep.
I run the fan club, so to speak. My question to you is, who's your go-to team? Who are your guys right now? What players are you looking at?
Yeah, well, I love both of those guys too. I think Keldon Johnson was the steal of last year's draft, and I think I had Devin Vassell at number 3 on my board this year. So wow. Spurs keep on Spursing. To be fair, they haven't had the best last 5 years as far as like, DeMar Carroll's contract last year. I think you would be the first to admit was not the best long-term investment. I'm a huge Knicks fan, but I'm just an appreciator of the game. I watch probably 2 to 3 games on League Pass every night. Last night I was watching Kings Celtics, and I was kind of obsessing over why Tyrese Halliburton was flare screening sometimes with Jaylen Brown defending. So I think like there's a lot of the league that I appreciate. Like, of course, I covered the Hawks for nearly 4 years down in Atlanta, so they have a soft spot in my heart. I'm still close with some of the media guys there. And then I also did some freelance assignments for some assistant coaches that went on to become head coaches. So, there are guys around the league that I root for, players around the league that I root for. I'm a diehard Michigan State fan, so I would say my favorite player of all time is Draymond. But I'm a Knicks.
You're the one.
Yeah. He's hey, I remember when Draymond was a chubby freshman who barely got off the bench, and then in the tournament turned it on the Jets when Michigan State went to the finals, when the Final Four was in Detroit, right around like the recession. It was really a meaningful kind of experience for the city of Detroit that Michigan State kind of, rose above. But of course, they went up against one of the all-time North Carolina teams that creamed them by like 25 points with Ty Lawson and Wayne Ellington, Tyler Hansbrough, Danny Green, Ed Davis. So, Draymond, since like being a chubby freshman, I've always just been so amazed at his rise. And I think everyone says, I could have told you Draymond Green was going to be a star. He's one of the go-to guys for that example, but I really wasn't on the bandwagon early with him. So that's been cool to see him kind of become a Hall of Famer. And then my favorite Knick of all time, Knicks are the team that I watch the most and obsess over the most. And it's a painful existence, but Pablo Prigioni is kind of the guy I've modeled my game after, just like trying to be a kind of sneaky point guard, try to steal some inbound passes here and there. And just, I always prided myself on my passing and my court vision. So that's kind of like the guy that I always like. I have a Pablo Prigioni Knicks jersey. I might be the only Knicks fan of all time to do that, but he's kind of a guy that I always kind of adored how he played. And he came over to the NBA as a 35-year-old rookie and had as much pep in his step as quickly now, or any rookie that's been energetic and fun. So,
who do you think is the future of the Knicks? I mean, just to pound that point, like, is it RJ Barrett? Is it Quickly? Is it Obi? It's definitely not Randall. Like, Julius Randle is just kind of like that veteran that's getting his on a almost like an expansion team,
Yeah. So Randall is only 25, and I've been really encouraged by what he's done this year. Granted, it is potentially a contract year. So like, I don't know if I'd want to bet the farm and give him a max, which I think he might get somewhere else. To be honest, I don't know if we have the guy long-term yet. I think Quickly, if there was a guy, Quickly is the one I'm most bullish on, just because he's a good 3-point shooter, an excellent free throw shooter, which translates to long-term kind of continued growth as a 3-point shooter. And he competes on defense. I think RJ is a very good kind of maybe 4th best player on a real contender, which, for the 3rd overall pick might not be the best. I kind of liken him to maybe a Luol Deng type, or maybe a Tyreek Evans long-term. I think the problem with those guys is unless they really improve their shooting, they always kind of need to be ball dominant. And that kind of, unless you're even James Harden, who needs to be ball dominant, like, he needs a great supporting cast to be a contender. So I wouldn't want to hitch my wagon to a player that needs the ball in their hands and can't really play off ball and isn't a top 5, top 10 player. I think, like, as you're saying with Julius Randle, we've seen time and time again across the NBA, and I think most relevantly recently with Isaiah Thomas on the Celtics, when you have a really great scorer and you surround that great scorer with awesome role players that are 3-and-D guys at every position, the gravity on the floor with that shooting allows that great scorer to go ISO every time, and you can pretty much forge your way to a 50-win team. Might not be effective in the playoffs, but like, I just think, like, in my internal checklist of all of the guys that aren't even in the NBA right now that could easily put up 25 in the right context, Mike Beasley comes to mind, Jimmer Fredette comes to mind. There are just so many guys that go to Europe or go to China just because they were never good enough to be, or they were never comfortable playing in the number 2 or number 5 role player role on the team. But if you accommodate everything retrofitting to that playing style, kind of like what the Rockets did with James Harden or what the Celtics did with Isaiah Thomas, I think you can really unlock some doors. We're seeing that a little bit with the Knicks right now, and Julius Randle, who kind of has carte blanche to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I'm a Duke fan, so RJ was supposed to be the guy, and Zion was just supposed to be the highlights, and it's kind of switched. I think RJ definitely just needs that system that makes it work, and that's the problem that I actually have always been a fan of the Knicks as just the organization. I'm more of a player-driven guy, so wherever LeBron's played, that's been my team, and before that, it was Charles Barkley. But that's the one thing about, like, does Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, without the San Antonio Spurs, like, do they become who they are? The Knicks organization as a whole has just been down so much for 20 years.
Yeah.
And you've seen players like kind of either leave the Knicks and flourish, or were flourishing and then came to the Knicks and not so much. But they've had some squads, they just I think they're trending in the right direction. Just we'll see what Tibbs can kind of put together.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that for 20 years it's kind of been a wasteland where talent goes to stop developing. And I think right now it might not be a best practice for every team in the league, but it's quite clear that what the Knicks have done is they've had this kind of influx of CAA overtaking the team. So from Leon Rose, who was a top agent at CAA for years, now as the president, Tom Thibodeau, a CAA client, as head coach. But not only that, you look at the kind of pipeline of Kentucky to CAA, it's pretty overwhelming. So you just look down the Knicks roster right now, and we're not even just talking about Quickly and Julius Randle, who are Kentucky alums, but it goes down the list to Nerlens Noel and Kevin Knox. Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, some Duke guys as well. You know, we have RJ, of course, and Austin Rivers. So I think like high pedigree guys and just kind of the replacement of, development coaches that may not have been super effective in the past to just a pipeline of like, yeah, again, like I still would prefer them to kind of go the Heat approach or the Spurs approach of just like really nurturing talent from all over the world and not just picking from like the high pedigree colleges. But there's a start there somewhere. And I can't complain if I think we're 10-13 or 11-13 right now. That just feels like we're on pace to win 60 games compared to what I've been experiencing in the past.
Yeah. Father's a huge Knicks fan, so Anthony Mason, John Starks, Patrick Ewing back in the day. It's interesting. My only concern with the Knicks these days is Tibbs, right? So we saw what he did with the Bulls. We saw what happened with the Timberwolves. I wonder if it's going to be a situation where 2 years from now it's going to be, he served his purpose. It's time for him to go. And kind of pivoting to Draymond, is it concerning at all that his offensive game, by and large, has just disappeared and he's kind of a shell of himself on offense? It's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, so I'll tackle the Tibbs part first. I think what you just prognosticated is 100% going to happen. I think Tibbs is going to the fundamentals that he's instilling in the culture right now are extremely valuable. I think Jason may have noticed if he's been watching the Knicks this year. RJ Barrett is so much more engaged on defense than he was before. Kevin Knox so much more engaged on defense when he gets to play. I would add that Tibbs in Minnesota was the president of basketball operations, whereas in Chicago, he was just the head coach. So when you have that kind of separation of church and state that the Knicks have right now, or the Bulls had with Tibbs, you don't make any short-term gains sacrificing long-term opportunity. So I think we saw that with Tibbs a bunch. He threw the kitchen sink to get Jeff Teague to be his point guard. He threw, the kitchen sink at just rounding out the rotation with guys that were Bulls disciple, like Taj Gibson got a contract. Joakim Noah, I believe, played there for a bit. Derrick Rose, of course, came. And no, like if I'm Tibbs and you trust those guys, like who am I to judge? Tibbs has been successful for years in the NBA, but I think there is a big distinguishing factor, and we saw that with Detroit with Stan Van Gundy. I think only Greg Popovich has proven to be successful in both roles because Greg Popovich is able to kind of remove himself a little bit from those shoes. And I think even in recent years, that role with R.C. Buford and that dynamic has gotten a little bit less flawless just because Pop is going to retire soon, and he doesn't want to be in the cellar of the Western Conference in his last year. So, if that means that they're trading Kawhi to get DeMar DeRozan rather than maybe investing Kawhi and turning that into the haul that the Pelicans got for Anthony Davis later on, or maybe trying to get a Jaylen Brown type from the Celtics. Like, I don't think there's ever been a perfect instance where the GM coach combo works out for the team long term. But then going back to Draymond, I think I was in a big debate with friends over the weekend of Draymond versus Ben Wallace long term, like who has a stronger Hall of Fame case. And I think it's pretty night and day that Draymond, with as many championships as he's won at this point and kind of being the rah-rah clear leader of the Warriors, compared to Ben, who may have been the rah-rah warrior a bit, but he also had Rasheed, and Chauncey Billups was kind of like the face of their offense. Anyway, neither here nor there on like this front, but I think Draymond's offensive skill set is still vastly superior to what like a Ben Wallace offered, just because he's such a great passer and he sees the floor so well. The shooting is certainly disconcerting, and I don't know if he'll ever get that back, but I still think if you're playing small ball with Draymond at the 5 and you surround him with good shooting, you can certainly have one of the most elite offenses in the league. even without him being a threat at pretty much any juncture. And I think Draymond, I have this issue, like, and by no means am I trying to compare myself to an NBA player because I'm a scrub that, is a rec league all-star. But I think like there are instances, and Draymond certainly like this, Pablo Prigioni certainly like this, where pass first players really want to just have that nice assist, and they care more about the nice assist than like getting the 2 points. So I think Draymond sometimes gets in his own head about trying to be a distributor when the lane is to be had. But, I think he's had some streakiness this year. He came out of the gates really hot once he came back from injury. I think for him, it's more just a matter of like, he needs to feel like he's on a championship contender to really be fully locked in and committed. Cause I think we know that Draymond's a little bit of a guy that likes to party a little bit off the floor. I think Clay going down really kind of hurt their chances of getting the best out of Draymond this year. And that's no excuse to Draymond. Like he should, like any player should come with 100% attention, but we're in a pandemic. I'm willing to give him a little bit benefit of the doubt that, he'll come back even more focused when he feels like the Warriors are really ready to take down the Lakers or Clippers, which I don't know. He has that confidence right now.
That is literally the most breakdown information about Draymond Green I've heard in my life. But I love Izzo and his ability, like, Zach Randolph, like taking these guys that don't pass the eye test when you first see them, and it's like, how's that guy going to get on the court at Michigan State? And then they have like pretty awesome NBA careers. Switching gears from the is zone, Lennox and I were discussing the gold standards in the NBA and like not necessarily investing, but you're never going to go wrong with LeBron. In LeBron we trust, but who is that next guy that not, and I don't necessarily mean like who's, the future. Like I think it's the projection would be like Zion is potentially the future of the league, but we're seeing where like Giannis and even Luka, I think, are kind of on a dip, because if Giannis doesn't win a championship, he's already got 2 MVPs. Like he's kind of failing now. Luka, was gangbusters, but now he's, I think he's at 27, 9-9, which is great.
Right.
And he's so young, but his team is trash right now.
Sure.
And then just to throw a couple more guys out, like I kind of like Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. Like I think that they have the ability, but are they going to be on the level of a LeBron and Steph and can you win a championship?
Yeah.
Same thing with like Damian Lillard, who I absolutely love, but I don't think you win with him being the go-to guy.
Yeah. I think with Lillard, so a lot there. I would start with Luka. I think Luka is the future of the league after LeBron's over. And I know he's having a dip this year. I attribute that to 3 things. Number one, he was literally quarantining in Slovenia during the pandemic in the offseason after the bubble. Slovenia had a lockdown. He literally couldn't go to the gym. He couldn't work out. I think he came into the season a little out of shape. The Dallas Mavericks had one of the worst kind of outbreaks of COVID across the roster of any team in the league. And KP is still just playing himself into shape. So I think, like, as a Knicks fan, I want Dallas to fail this year. Like, I want them to not figure it out. I want our pick to be a top 10 pick. It will almost make the KP trade feel worth it. But I would not read anything into Luka at age 21 right now and say, as you said, 27, 9-9. Like,
that's a terrible.
I think if people are low on Luka based on the first 2 months of the season, that's an opportunity for some people that are believers in the guy, because I think he is just a transcendent talent. And we saw him in the bubble outplaying Kawhi, outplaying Paul George. Well, most people were outplaying Paul George, no disrespect.
Preseason fee.
Yeah. And then I'm actually a little lower on Zion. I mean, if you look at the Pelicans' defensive metrics with him on and off the floor, it's very clear that at this point he is not the kind of workhorse defensively that we kind of thought he would be coming out of Duke. I think there were a lot of highlights at Duke where he's diving on the floor, kind of fighting for loose balls and just kind of going off. I think like you mentioned him kind of in passing. I think after LeBron, the next zeitgeist player in the league right now has to be Steph. Steph is, two-time MVP, best shooter ever.
He's one twisted ankle away from almost being done. So
Yeah,
that's the only reason I like even Kevin Durant, who's come out the gates great,
right,
by his injury, but like those two are kind of, it's like they've been on that level. It's like, so who's that next guy that transcends to kind of that tier?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and 29 teams out of the league are going to hate when I say this, but like, what's stopping AD from being that guy, right? LeBron retires, AD becomes the guy in LA. They recruit whoever to be his running mate post LeBron. Seems like a pretty cushy path forward. They have a really good young team around. I think from Schroeder to Caruso to, I'm not the biggest Harrell guy, but they've clearly figured out how to make the most out of, mid-levels and minimum contracts. Giannis, I think, will be forever benefiting if he's able to get maybe someone a little bit more like a Brad Beal than Drew Holiday that can be the primary offensive option. And then Giannis could kind of become more of a Anthony Davis type where he's rolling and playing the big man role rather than the LeBron role of trying to initiate every time. Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell, I think I would put them actually on different tiers. I think Mitchell is far more consistent than Murray, though Murray, if you look at the bubble, went head to head and outperformed Mitchell in those games. I think Jokic, certainly, like Jokic is on pace to be either the MVP or a top 3 finish. Joel Embiid is finally bringing the fire to the table in Philly that we were hoping to see for a few years. I actually would pick him to be MVP if the season ended today. But like Curry, like KD, Joel has certainly not been flawless with health over the years. So, all these guys are, God forbid an injury away, but those are just some of the names that come to mind for me. And as you said, I love Dame. I think Dame can actually be the best player on a championship team, but I think you need to kind of have him as 1A to someone else's 1B, depending on who that 1B is, and that person would certainly have to be, in the top 15, maybe like Bam Adebayo or better on that list of great players.
Definitely not CJ McCollum, who's a beast, but
right.
Yeah.
And CJ, to my earlier point of like, if you build a team around something that I think CJ gets a little taken for granted, but I think CJ could easily be a 30-point per game guy if you just put him in Brad Beal's situation, or you put him in a situation where the team is really revolved around him. I think it's hard to be second wheel when for your entire life you were the go-to guy. And a guy like CJ in particular went to Lehigh, where I would love to go to Basketball or Sports Reference and just see what his usage rate looked like there, because I'd imagine it was like 40%. And now he's playing off ball to someone that, I don't think anyone would argue that CJ should be playing on ball and Dame off ball. But I give a lot of credit to those guys that have seamlessly turned into off ball stars in their own right.
I think one thing I would say, and Jason would probably agree with me, I'm very impressed by the talent base of all the team. I like your basketball knowledge. It's obvious that you guys have a passion for it, and I expect that's going to probably shine through as more packs are released and we get further into the season. So that's really eye-opening for me. Since you are kind of in the Knicks and crannies, I love the glue guys, right? So maybe this is not the most accurate title, but one of my favorite rookies is Tyrese Halliburton. I think he does everything. I think he's a stat sheet filler. I think he sees the floor well. He can screen, he can rebound, he can score. He can do everything. What are players like that kind of catch your attention?
Yeah, I love Halliburton too. I was I think he was 6th on my board, and I regret not having him top 4. I think he's kind of like Sean Livingston with a great 3-point shot. And if that's like a player that you have for 10 years, then you're going to have a really great team. Looking around the league, glue guy wise, like I've always just admired what PJ Tucker can do. And I think it was criminal and malpractice for the Nets to not withhold until they got PJ in the trade with Harden. I don't know what it would have taken, if it's more picks, if it's giving up Dinwiddie somehow, but PJ Tucker wanted to come to Brooklyn. I know that for a fact. And I know that PJ Tucker would have been the perfect 4 in that kind of lineup, maybe playing some 5 at the end of games like he's done in Houston. Joe Ingles has always been a guy that I've just loved to watch. Great passer. He's like, I would honestly say my game is probably closest to Joe Ingles when Joe Ingles got cut by the Clippers because he wasn't yet a lights out shooter. He's turned into a lights out shooter. And I think that's like a perfect example of a guy that can thrive on ball or off ball, frees up so much. He's like and this is going to sound super extreme because I'm not trying to argue that he's on this level at all. But the things that Joe Ingles brings to your offense are not too different from something that maybe a Kawhi or a Kevin Durant can bring on the offensive end, where they can just stand in the corner and hit at 40% rates, or you put him on ball and do some pick and roll action. He's going to make the right decision more times than not. Of course, Joe Ingles is also a very good defender, getting up there in age a bit, so not quite the elite defender that he may have been 3 years ago when he locked down Paul George in the playoffs. But he's another guy that I've always just admired and really loved watching play. And then he's not in the league right now. I think he wasn't super inspiring in Philadelphia last year as the third big, but Kyle O'Quinn was a guy that I always just thought had it and never got that fair shake to kind of explode. But he had a little bit of the Nikola Jokic or Kevin Love outlet passing off of rebounds and great floor vision. I actually did a story on him years ago where he was a catcher growing up in baseball. And he said that part of what made him a great passer in basketball is when someone would try to steal first base to get to second, he could anticipate the second baseman or the shortstop running to the bag and kind of hit them in stride to apply the tag. So I thought like that was a really interesting kind of cross sport example of how someone's been able to leverage experiences elsewhere to have better floor vision or anticipate timing with passing and things like that. So yeah, I think I just went into the vaults of like the most irrelevant guys of all time. But
well, it's interesting you say that because I have a play. I'm a Duke guy, like I've said, and I've really just always thought like I have my fan favorites. Like I always like Gary Trent Jr. I love Marvin Bagley III. I think if he could just get healthy, we'll be good to go. We'll stay on this topic, Lennox. I think you've hit your heart out. So is there anything you need to say before you get out of here?
No, Jacob, thank you for your time. It's much appreciated. Have a good one. Thanks again, guys.
Lennox, great talking to you. Hope to do it again sometime.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Lennox. And so we're getting. I mean, now we're just talking shop. So we'll get to wrapping this up as well. But I wanted to one more Top Shot thing. A guy like Gary Trent Jr., who lit it up the other night. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. He doesn't have a moment. And so what is the level of like, because then I'll see a guy like Ingles has like a moment, Yeah. So is it just that they haven't had anything? Is it so difficult to get everybody like to have a moment? Because, in basketball, traditional cards, everybody has a card, even the guys that have a cup of coffee in the league,
Yeah. Yeah. And we're certainly aiming to have similar parity on that level where every player will have a moment. I think as far as restrictions with the league go and Players Association, we're allowed up to 3 moments per single game. But we don't necessarily have someone on the league side that's just watching every game and finding the 3 moments for us. So a lot gets lost in the shuffle there. Gary Trent's a good example. I think the most pressing example might be Blake Griffin, who's arguably a future Hall of Famer. These are guys that we're well aware need to have moments. We have a list of kind of the guys that we're trying to hammer out. I think they will come in due time. With Portland in particular, I think, we've seen Derek Jones Jr. have some really eye-popping moments so far this year. So that's one of the 3 plays from that game, so to speak, if we're kind of budgeting based on who we can get in. But I think Trent will come soon. I'm honestly not fully in the trenches on kind of picking which moments come in, but I certainly hear that critique and agree with it that, if Gary Trent doesn't have a moment on Top Shot, but Isaiah Robbie has 2, then there's a little bit of, disjointedness there. So we'll get it all set. I think it's again, one of the big bottlenecks right now is just getting packs out to the ecosystem. And once we can do that, a lot more players coming.
Did you ever see the Derek Jones video highlight from like UNLV when he was like not even a freshman? And
airplane mode.
I swear I never, like, I saw that and he was at UNLV and I was like, man, I hope he can make it into the league. And that was what was one thing I enjoyed about like the Cool Cats moments. Cause when the list kind of came out, I was like, but I like Derek Jones a lot. Like, he's a beast. I think the dunk is the greatest play in sports personally.
Yeah.
So is there anything you want to cap out? Any shout outs or like follows or anything you want to hit up?
Follow us on NBA at NBA TopShot _, between NBA and TopShot on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me at Eisenberg 43. That's EISENBERG 43 on Twitter. And yeah, no, this is great, Jason. I love talking hoops, love talking TopShot. So appreciate you having me on, and hope to do it again sometime.
So between you and me, just you and me, what time is the pack drop?
No comments, but I will say, if you're in the stress testers group, you'll be hearing from us sometime in the not too distant future.
I will say that like I've lost some sleep over like waiting for the pack drops, but that's where like the reservation packs actually kind of, I don't like a fair system. I don't like a participation ribbon society, so like I want to be rewarded because I'm giving up sleep or, active and stuff. So, we're behind you guys 110%. Appreciate everything you do, your time, your efforts. I don't know how you can sit in that Discord sometimes and just get pounded with all those questions, but you're a fighter and you're doing great. And for sure, a month from now will feel like a year and things will change and we'll try and get you back on.
Sounds like a plan, Jason. Looking forward to it. Appreciate the pod. Appreciate having me on, and we'll chop it up soon.
That's going to do it for TopShot NFT. I'm Jason, for Linux, for Jacob. Next time.